Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today I want to share with you my May reading wrap up. I want to talk to you about the books that I have read, and it were fewer than I wanted to read, and I think as a first step I want to quickly talk about why that is. If you don't watch my reading vlogs, you probably haven't heard, but my grandpa passed away. Now the week you're watching this is the week of the funeral, so for now I probably will upload a little bit less than I did. I still try to keep the algorithm happy, we'll see about that, but yeah, other things are more important right now, and it just hit me really hard. My grandpa was a very important person in my life, and it's just not great losing someone you love. So yeah, that's the reason why my May did not turn out the way that I thought it would reading wise. But let's talk about the stats quickly, because I always like to mention some stats at the beginning that have to do with my goal of reading a 0 TBR, reaching a 0 TBR. And then we talk about the books that I finished, and I will give you little reviews of them. Now, one thing I did achieve in May is that I got my TBR to go under 50 books again, which is very good. I started with less than 50 books at the beginning of the year, but then right in January is my birthday, so I got quite a few gifts, and since then I've been slowly trying to get under the 50 again, so we did that. So in the beginning of May, we started out with a TBR of 52 books, and let's talk about how that has changed now. So the first important number, if we're talking about 0 TBR, is the number of books that I have read, and in May that was 6 books. So I have finished 6 books in May. The next important number is the amount of books that I have bought. And in May, luckily, that was only 2 books, and usually I only buy new audiobooks because I do not have a backlist of those. And so I buy one and I immediately read it, so that's fine by me. And then for the books I have borrowed, that number is also quite low this month, which is great because I only borrowed 1 book for May. Now, if we do a little bit of math, we have 6 books read, and then 2 books bought and 1 book borrowed. That means overall I have reduced my TBR by 3 books, which is actually the best I have done all year so far. Like -3 is the best number I had this year in a month, which is kind of sad, but we're just gonna ignore it. And with those -3 books, I have managed to reduce my TBR to now 49 books. And if you're interested, at the beginning of the year I started with 47, so my hope is, fingers crossed, that by the end of June we might have gone under the starting point of the year, which would be great, because by then I would have read down all of the additional birthday books basically. That's the goal for June, but yeah, those are my little stats for May. And for those of you who are interested, I also participated in the Asian Readathon, and unfortunately I did not complete all 5 of the prompts. I completed only 4. I completed a book from an Asian author, a book that feels timeless, a debut book, and something that represents something you want in your next life. The one that I did not finish is Underrated Book. I had started the Tangleroot Palace for that, but I didn't quite manage to finish it in time, which is okay by me. I will finish it in June. But now let's talk about the 6 books that I have finished in the month of May. The first book I finished was already a great hit, and that was She Who Became the Sun by Shelley Parker Jan. This is a book that is inspired by Chinese history. It has a little bit of magic in it, but it's mainly historical fantasy, and we're following a young girl who grows up during a drought and her family dies and she's left all alone. But before they passed away, her brother got the kind of fate that he would achieve greatness, and the girl was just supposed to be nothing. That was kind of her fate. So now that the brother is dead, she decides to take over his persona, and she goes to a monastery where he was supposed to go, and she gets in and she gets a chance of a new life. Now this is a very political, a very much like very smart, very cunning book. Like all of these characters are more than a little bit morally gray. None of these are nice people. And that's what I love this book for. It is just a book that I couldn't put down. The characters we get in here, they are flawed in all of the best ways. There's also a lot of discussion of gender in this book. We have this one main character who changes basically to be her brother, so she lives as a man basically. We have another character who is a eunuch, and he struggles with his gender a lot because he's often misread and he wants to be seen as a man, as a strong man. And there's a lot of stuff like that in this book. It's just fantastic and I highly recommend it. I did a whole reading vlog for this duology, and I gave the first book 4.5 stars. The only criticism that I had was that the first part of the book, it just felt out of touch with the rest of the book, and I think it would have been better to make this an epilogue and sprinkle in some other like memories that we learned during that first part throughout the book when we need them, because it just didn't really go anywhere, that first part. And then when you start the second part, it feels like you're reading a completely different book, and it's a much better book. So yeah, loved that one. And then the next book I finished was my audiobook, Ship of Magic by Hobb. This one was quite the chunker. The audiobook is 35 hours long, but I did enjoy this one. And this one, we have a world where there is people who have life ships, and these life ships are made of a special wood, and whenever 3 captains die on the ship will come to life. It's called quickening, and at the beginning of the story we follow one particular family when their life ship is about to quicken because the family patriarch is about to die, and the things that happen because of his will. And we follow lots of characters. This one has many POVs. Some of them are quite mysterious as well. You don't really know what you're following exactly, but there is definitely some intrigue and some mysteries surrounding these life ships, like what are they actually made of. But these characters are pretty much the opposite of what I just described for She Who Became the Sun. These characters are very realistic, but they can also be extremely frustrating because they're all just stumbling through their lives, some of them extremely confused when their actions have actual consequences. And there is some really horrible characters in here that mistreat their families and that are just so stuck in their own head. They can't really think straight and stuff like that. So it's definitely a book where you have to like take deep breath every once in a while, but there's also quite lovable characters in this book. So I'm definitely excited to read the next book in this series, but I also had to take a little bit of a break after finishing this first book because I needed a little bit of something else there. So I gave this first book 4 stars. Then the next book I finished was a short story collection. It is called Cursed Bunny by Bora Chung. This is a collection of I think like 9 or 10 stories, something like that. Yeah, 10 stories. And the first couple of stories are more horror leaning, and then some of the others also have a distinct like fairy tale touch, and I really liked the combination of these different stories. Overall, I gave this one 4 stars. There is just a big variation. Like some of these stories I absolutely loved, like the title story of the book. Some others didn't really work for me. There was a story about AI, I think, in here, and I don't really care about those. There was also a story about, I think, a car crash situation, which is also something I don't love reading about, but overall, like, the writing style was really great. I really enjoyed the way these stories were told, and I liked the themes that they played with. And I think if you like these darker, horror-y, like body horror kind of stories, definitely check this one out. And it has the most stunning cover as well. So I gave this one 4 stars. I think I already said that. Then the next book I finished was another audiobook, and that was The Sea Elephants by Shastri Akella. In this book, we follow a young boy in India who starts to figure out that he's gay, and the way that this is not really an option for him. His family tries to suppress that, and he then at some point is forced to run away, and he joins a theater group, a street theater group. And I really enjoyed this book. I think it is a very hard read. There's a lot of homophobia in this one, also some internalized homophobia. There is horrible stuff happening to our main character, so definitely keep that in mind if you want to read the book. You check some content warnings. There is sexual assault in here, there is police brutality in here, there is like losing loved ones, there is just a lot, like grief, a lot of like dark stuff happening here. But we also have this love story of our main character meeting an American young man when he is part of that theater group, and the kind of friendship and then love that grows from their meeting. And I think this was a really interesting book, a very well-rounded look at being gay in India in the 90s. I very much enjoyed this, even though it was quite hard to read at points. And it's just, yeah, one of those books where I think if you're the right kind of person, you can gain quite a lot of from reading this. But this can also be like very harmful if you're not in the right mindset to read it, I think, because there is so much horrible stuff happening to our main character. This also discusses conversion therapy facilities and stuff like that. So it's definitely a harrowing story, but I did really enjoy it and I gave it 4 stars as well. What I also really loved about that story is the way that it portrays sticking to traditions and to your roots as a person, opposed to just sticking to the parts that you can gain something from. So we do have these like 2 groups basically. We have the father character and then the leader of this conversion facility, who see themselves as very religious people, and they pray to their like masculine god and stuff. And it's just very narrow, you know. If you're not that kind of man that they think is the right kind, then you are definitely wrong. And then on the other hand, we have this theater group that is very much queer to the bone, and they portray the myth of this religion in the way they were originally written, and a lot of characters have been kind of written out of it. And this probably also has to do with colonialism and our like Western idea of men and women and stuff like that. I can't imagine, I'm not an expert on that, but just the way that in these original myths there was so much more diversity. There were like people who the gods turned into a man and then into a woman, and they fell in love with someone, and so for some part they were in a homosexual relationship and all these things. And yeah, I just really liked the like 2 points that were portrayed with that, the way you can use myth and faith and tradition for very different purposes. Like the one side for finding beauty in diversity, and the other side for just forcing everyone to be the way you want them to be. Then the next book I finished was He Who Drowned the World. This is the sequel and conclusion in this duology with She Who Became the Sun. It's called the Radiant Emperor duology. And I loved this book. Like, book 2 was even better than book 1. It's also even darker. The characters do even more horrible stuff. But I was here for it. I loved it. I grew to love these characters, even though they are so flawed. We also get a character that gets way more screen time in the second book, and I loved seeing his journey as well. And it was just so good, and I love what Shelley Parker-Chan did here. I can't wait to read their next book, and I gave this one 5 stars. It was just the perfect conclusion. If you like messy, flawed, dark characters who are cunning and smart, but maybe destroy their own happiness in the way, then you definitely need to read this series. And then the last book I finished just last night was As Long as the Lemon Trees Grow by Zoulfa Katouh. This is a book about Syria. The author is Canadian, but her family is from Syria. And this is a YA novel. I would say it is mainly a romance and has this horrible backdrop of the revolution, the war, and just fighting for your life every single day for that romance. In this book we follow a young girl called Salama, and she is a doctor. She wanted to be a pharmacist, but because she lives in homes when it was attacked and cut off, and there was all the fighting, like a lot of the doctors were killed or taken into custody and taken away, and so she is forced to become a doctor in a way and to help people in the hospital that have suffered from like horrible things, bombings and other terrible stuff that happens in the city. And she meets a boy who is trying to take care of his 2 younger siblings. They both have lost pretty much all of their other family already, and the girl still has her sister-in-law, which is also her best friend Lila, who is also pregnant. The boy has his 2 younger siblings to take care of, and they find a connection, and they also slowly over the course of the book decide that they will have to leave Syria, which is a very difficult journey for them, like not the actual leaving, but coming to the conclusion that they will have to leave or they just won't survive. And I think it portrays that really well, like the horrors of war, the difficulty with deciding to leave everything you know behind to try to save your life. The thing I didn't absolutely love about this is that I'm just not a romance reader, so the heavy focus we have in here on that romance, while I did like it, I do like what the author did with the romance, I wasn't really invested or interested in it. And so I gave this book 4 stars. It's like a lower 4 stars, I would say, but I think for older teens this could be quite an interesting book. I would definitely say check out content warnings for this, because the horrors of war are definitely in this book, especially with our main character working in the hospital and seeing all of the injuries and the way that she can't save everyone because they don't have the medication, they don't have the staff they would need to save everyone and stuff. So yeah, it's definitely a heartbreaking read, but one I would recommend if you're interested, especially if you do like a little bit of romance in your stories. And that's it. That were all the books I have finished in May. I also have a couple that I will now finish off in the beginning of June, hopefully, and I will talk about those in my next wrap up. As I said, I might upload fewer videos for a little while now. We will see. I did have some plans for June and I will try to fit them all in. We'll see about that. But if you like this video, leave a like or a nice comment. I really appreciate those. And if you subscribe, I will talk to you very soon. Bye!